Armand stood on the edge of the crowded harbor, his old bag hanging from his shoulder. The bag was the only thing he owned that carried his clothes, a notebook, and a few coins. Life had not been kind to him in recent years. He once worked in a small shop that closed down after the owner left the city. Since then, he had been moving from place to place, searching for a chance to earn a living. People who saw him often thought he was lost or without direction, but inside he carried a quiet hope that something good would happen one day. That morning, the harbor was alive with noise. Families laughed, children pointed at the big cruise ship, and music played from the open deck. The cruise ship looked like a floating palace. Its tall white body reflected the sunlight, and the windows sparkled like glass towers. Armand had never been so close to such a ship. He had seen pictures in magazines, but standing here made him feel both small and amazed. He had not come as a guest. He was only standing there because a man from the harbor had told him that sometimes the ship needed extra helpers. They gave small tasks like carrying bags or cleaning, and in return they paid enough for food. Armand waited with patience near the workers' gate. He did not wear fine clothes like the passengers who carried shining suitcases. His shirt was plain, his shoes were old, but his eyes were steady. After a while, one of the officers called him. The officer asked if he could lift heavy bags and clean the lower deck. Armand nodded quickly. This was his chance to at least earn something. He followed the officer, entered the ship from the workers' side, and felt his heart beat faster as he stepped onto the shining floor. It was the first time he had ever set foot on a cruise. Inside, the air was filled with the smell of food and fresh flowers. The workers moved quickly, carrying trays, polishing railings, and guiding passengers. Armand kept to himself and did whatever task was given to him. He carried bags from the storage area, wiped tables on the deck, and helped move boxes in the kitchen. Nobody paid much attention to him, yet he felt thankful just to be there. He would be given food for the day and a little money. For someone like him, even that was a blessing. In the evening, when his work slowed down, he stood near the side railing of the ship. The cruise was moving now, leaving the shore behind. The sound of waves filled the air. The sky had turned golden with the setting sun, and the sea stretched wide and endless. Armand leaned against the railing and closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of his village, of the days when life was simpler, and of his mother who always told him that kindness would one day return to him. He had nothing in his hands, but he still carried her words in his heart. While standing there, he noticed the laughter of a group not far from him. Young people were enjoying themselves, taking pictures and throwing pieces of bread into the water for the birds. Among them was a girl who seemed a little different from the rest. She was not as loud, and her smile carried a softness that caught Armand's attention. She wore a light blue dress, and her hair moved with the evening wind. She looked at the sea more than she looked at her friends, almost as if she had her own thoughts hidden behind her smile. Armand did not know who she was, nor did he think much about it. He only felt that she seemed kinder than the others. The night arrived, and lights covered the ship like stars. Passengers gathered for dinner and music, while Armand returned to his small corner near the workers' area. He ate the simple meal given to him and rested on a wooden bench. His life was still uncertain, but something inside told him this journey would not be like the others. He could not explain why, yet the sea, the ship, and even the sight of that quiet girl made him feel that his story was about to change. The morning sun rose above the sea, painting the sky with soft shades of pink and orange. The cruise ship floated gently, its decks glowing under the early light. Armand woke up from his corner in the workers' area. His back felt stiff from sleeping on the wooden bench, but he did not complain. He was thankful for the food and for the chance to be on board. After washing his face with cold water, he went straight to the lower deck where the officer gave him new tasks for the day. He carried trays to the dining hall and helped sweep the floor before passengers arrived for breakfast. The dining hall was filled with shining tables, golden lights, and the smell of fresh bread. Armand kept his eyes down and moved quietly. He never wished to disturb the guests who sat in fine clothes and spoke with laughter. While clearing a table near the window, he again noticed the same girl he had seen last evening. She was sitting with her friends, but her attention was not fully on them. She kept glancing outside at the wide ocean, her face calm and thoughtful. Armand did not stare for long, yet something about her made him curious. She looked gentle, not proud like the others. Her friends spoke loudly about shopping and music, but she only smiled softly and nodded. When her eyes turned and almost met his, Armand quickly lowered his head and walked away with the tray. He reminded himself that he was only a helper here. His world was different from hers, and there was no reason to think more about it. After finishing his work, he returned to the back kitchen. The cook gave him some bread and tea for breakfast. Armand ate slowly, listening to the sounds of the ship. He could hear music from the top deck, footsteps in the hallways, and the endless rhythm of the sea. Each sound reminded him that this place was far from the quiet life he once knew. He felt both amazed and out of place, as if he was walking inside a dream that did not belong to him. Later in the day, the ship stopped near a small island. Many passengers went out to swim, walk on the beach, and take pictures. Workers were busy preparing boats to carry guests from the cruise to the shore. Armand was told to help passengers wear safety belts before they entered the small boats. He stood near the edge, guiding people one by one. Some looked at him without notice, while others smiled politely. When the girl in the blue dress came with her friends, Armand once again saw the same calmness on her face. She held her sandals in one hand, her feet touching the cool deck. When she stepped forward, she almost lost balance for a second. Without thinking, Armand moved and held the railing steady for her. She looked at him and gave a small, thankful nod. It was the first time she had noticed him closely. Her eyes were kind and her voice was gentle when she softly said, "Thank you." Then she stepped into the boat with her friends, leaving Armand standing still for a moment. His heart felt warm, though he quickly reminded himself not to hope for anything more. The day passed with music, games, and laughter on the ship. Armand continued working, cleaning the deck after the passengers returned from the island. He was tired, but he found a strange peace in watching the sea. At night, when the ship began to move again, the wind grew stronger. The waves hit the sides and the lights reflected across the dark water. Armand leaned against the railing, breathing the salty air. He thought of the girl once more. Who was she? Why did her smile stay in his mind even though he barely knew her? Far above, on the upper deck, the girl stood quietly away from her friends. She looked down at the sea with deep eyes, as if searching for something hidden beneath the waves. She did not know that the same man who had helped her earlier was watching the same sea with quiet thoughts. Neither of them could guess that soon their lives would cross in a way that would change everything. The third day of the cruise began with clear skies and calm waters. The ship moved smoothly and the passengers were filled with energy. Some gathered for morning exercise on the open deck, while others enjoyed breakfast with music playing in the background. Workers hurried in every corner, making sure everything stayed perfect for the guests. Armand started his day early as usual. He polished the railings, cleaned the walkways, and carried supplies from one deck to another. His body was tired, but he kept working without complaint. He knew his pay would be small, yet for him it was more than he had in weeks. Every step reminded him that he needed to keep going, because giving up would mean hunger and hopelessness. As he moved across the deck with a bucket and cloth, his eyes once again caught the sight of the girl in the blue dress. This time, she was sitting alone on a chair near the edge of the deck, holding a book in her hands. The morning light fell on her face, making her look peaceful. Most of the passengers were noisy and busy with laughter, but she seemed to enjoy the quiet. Armand paused for a moment, then turned away quickly. He reminded himself that she was a guest and he was just a worker. Yet no matter how much he tried, his thoughts kept returning to her. He had never spoken to people of her kind, people who looked as if they belonged to a different world. Still, there was something about her presence that made him curious. Later in the day, Armand was asked to help near the swimming pool area. The place was filled with music, splashes of water, and the sound of joy. Children jumped into the pool while adults sat with drinks and laughed. Armand's job was to keep the floor dry and clear any towels or glasses that were left around. He kept his eyes on the ground, working quietly when he noticed the same girl again. She was standing near the pool, watching her friends swim. Her friends called her to join them, but she shook her head with a gentle smile. Instead, she walked closer to the edge, looking at the water with a faraway expression. Armand noticed that she leaned forward a little too much, and for a second he thought she might slip. But she stepped back before anything happened. Still, his heart beat faster, as if warning him that something could go wrong. When her friends left the poolside, she remained there, sitting on a chair with her feet close to the water. She opened her book again and seemed lost in her thoughts. Armand kept working, but he glanced at her now and then. He wondered why she preferred silence while others chased laughter. That evening, the passengers gathered in the grand hall for a small party. Music played, lights sparkled, and people danced. Armin was asked to serve drinks. He moved carefully through the crowd, holding trays and avoiding the laughter of people who hardly noticed him. Yet as he passed by one table, he saw her again. She was dressed differently, wearing a white dress that made her look even more graceful. She smiled politely when her friends spoke, but her eyes seemed distant, as though she was searching for something she could not name. For a moment, her gaze fell on Armin as he placed a glass on the table nearby. Their eyes met briefly, and she gave him the same gentle nod she had given when he helped her at the boat. Armin felt a warmth in his chest, but he quickly turned away, afraid to stay in her sight for too long. When the party ended, Armin returned to his corner near the workers' area. He sat with his simple meal and thought about the day. He wondered who she really was, why she chose silence over laughter, and why her eyes seemed to carry a secret. He shook his head and reminded himself again that he was a struggling man with no place in her world. Still deep inside, he could not deny that fate was slowly pulling them closer. Above, in her own cabin, the girl looked out of the window at the endless sea. She closed her book and whispered to herself, wondering why the face of a simple worker kept returning to her mind. She did not know his name, yet she felt that he carried something rare, something more real than all the glitter around her. Neither of them knew that soon an accident would bring them face to face in a way neither could ignore. The sea was calm that afternoon, and the sky stretched wide with only a few soft clouds. Passengers filled the open deck, enjoying games, music, and food. The air was filled with laughter, yet in one corner Armin worked quietly, wiping the railing and making sure the floor stayed clean. He moved without being noticed, yet his eyes kept drifting toward the same girl in the blue dress. She was standing near the edge of the deck, her hair moving with the wind, her eyes fixed on the sea. Her friends had gone inside for snacks, leaving her alone by the railing. She leaned forward slightly, holding her book in one hand while the other rested loosely on the metal rail. Armin noticed her position and felt uneasy. He had seen many passengers lean carelessly, but something about her made him alert. He kept watching from a distance as he worked, his heart beating faster with each step she took closer to the edge. Then it happened. A sudden strong wave hit the side of the ship, causing it to shake. The girl lost her balance and the book slipped from her hand into the water. She leaned forward to catch it, but the railing was slippery. In an instant, her feet slipped, and with a sharp gasp, she fell over the side into the wide sea below. The sound of her fall made a few people scream, and panic spread across the deck. Some passengers pointed toward the water, shouting for help, but for a moment nobody moved. The sea looked endless, and the girl struggled in the waves, her arms rising and sinking as she fought to stay above. Armin dropped his cloth and ran without thinking. His heart pounded in his chest, but his mind was clear. He climbed quickly over the railing and dived straight into the water. The cold hit him like ice, but he pushed forward, swimming strongly toward the girl. The waves were rougher than they looked from above, and each movement demanded strength. But Armin refused to stop. He could hear her faint cry before the water covered her again. When he reached her, she was already weak, her arms moving wildly in fear. Armin caught her from behind, holding her tightly to keep her head above the water. "Stay still," he said in a firm but calm voice, though he knew she might not hear clearly. She struggled for a moment, then leaned against him as her strength faded. Armin kicked hard with his legs, pushing both of them toward the ship. The weight of another person made every movement heavy, but his will grew stronger with each stroke. From above, ropes were being thrown into the water and workers shouted directions. A lifeboat was lowered quickly. Armin kept swimming until strong arms reached down and pulled the girl into the boat. Then they helped him climb up, his body shaking from the effort. The passengers cheered and clapped when they saw both of them safe. Some shouted in relief while others rushed to see the girl. She lay on the floor of the boat, coughing water but breathing. Her eyes slowly opened, and the first thing she saw was Armin sitting near her, wet and tired, his chest rising and falling heavily. For a moment her gaze stayed on him. She remembered his face, the quiet worker she had noticed before. He had jumped without hesitation, risking his own life to save her. She wanted to speak, but her voice was weak. Instead, she gave him a faint smile, her eyes filled with gratitude. The lifeboat returned to the main ship, and people crowded around as the girl was lifted carefully onto the deck. The ship's doctor checked her and confirmed that she was safe. Her friends cried and hugged her, thanking everyone around. But she kept looking past them, her eyes searching for Armand. Armand stood a little away, his clothes dripping with water, his body shivering from the cold. He did not wait for thanks or attention. He only wanted to be sure she was alive. Once he saw her sitting up and breathing, relief washed over him. Without a word, he turned and walked back toward the workers' area. Passengers whispered to each other, speaking about the brave man who had saved the girl. Some clapped again as he walked away, but Armand lowered his head, unwilling to stand in the center of attention. To him, it was not about pride. He had only done what felt right. That night, while the ship grew quiet again, the girl lay in her cabin thinking of the man who had saved her. She remembered the strength in his arms, the calm in his voice, and the way he disappeared without waiting for praise. She knew she had to find him. The next morning, the ship buzzed with talk about the brave rescue. Everywhere passengers gathered, the same story was repeated. They spoke about how the girl had fallen, how the worker had jumped without a second thought, and how both had been pulled safely back. Some described it with excitement, while others spoke with admiration. For many, the image of a poor helper risking his life to save a girl was something unforgettable. Armand, however, did not want to hear any of it. He returned to his usual work quietly, cleaning the deck and carrying supplies as if nothing had happened. His clothes had dried, but his body still felt heavy from the struggle in the sea. He ignored the curious glances from other workers and kept his head low. He did not enjoy attention. For him, the rescue was not about becoming a hero. It was only about saving a life, because no person deserved to be left in danger when someone could help. The girl, meanwhile, rested in her cabin. Her name was Ayla. Her friends stayed near her, fussing over her health and asking again and again how she felt. She answered politely, but her mind was far away. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Armand diving into the water, his face calm even in danger. She remembered how he held her steady when she was helpless, and how he disappeared silently afterward. By noon, she told her friends she wanted to walk on the deck. She wore a light scarf and moved slowly, her steps careful but steady. Passengers she passed gave her warm smiles and asked how she was. She thanked them with kindness, but her eyes searched for only one face. At last, she saw him. Armand was on his knees, scrubbing the floor near the lower deck. His shirt was plain, his hands rough with work, but there was dignity in his movements. He did not see her at first. He was too focused on the task, lost in his own world. Ayla walked closer until her shadow fell across the floor where he worked. Armand looked up in surprise. For a moment he froze, unsure what to say. She smiled softly and spoke in a voice filled with gratitude. "You saved my life." "Thank you." Armand quickly stood, wiping his hands nervously on his shirt. "It was nothing," he said, avoiding her gaze. "Anyone would have done the same." "But you did it," Ayla replied gently. "You risked your life when no one else moved. I owe you more than just words." Her friends standing nearby watched with amazement. They had never seen Ayla speak with such warmth to anyone outside their circle. But Ayla did not care about their surprise. She wanted to understand the man who had saved her, the man who walked away without asking for thanks. Armand shook his head. "Please do not think of it as a debt. I only did what was right. You should rest and be with your friends." Ayla studied him for a moment. She noticed the weariness in his eyes, the plainness of his clothes, and the humility in his voice. He was not like the others on the ship who lived for attention and praise. He seemed to carry a story hidden beneath his silence. Before she could ask more, an officer called Armand to carry supplies to the kitchen. He bowed his head slightly to Ayla and walked away quickly. She stood there, watching him disappear into the crowd of workers. Her heart felt unsettled. She wanted to know more about him, but he seemed determined to stay distant. That evening, Ayla sat by her cabin window, the sea stretching endlessly outside. Her friends chatted about the party planned for the next night, but she hardly listened. Her thoughts circled around Armand. Who was he? Why was he working here? What dreams did he hide behind his quiet face? She decided then that she would not let this man remain a mystery. He had saved her life, but something inside told her that fate had brought them together for more than just that moment. She did not yet know his story, but she was determined to find it out. Far below, in the workers' quarters, Armand sat with his simple meal. He ate quietly, listening to the laughter of passengers above. He thought of the girl, her soft smile, and the gratitude in her eyes. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to wonder what it would be like if his life was different. But then he shook his head and returned to reality. He was a struggling man, and she belonged to a world far beyond his reach. What neither of them knew was that the truth about her would soon come to light, and it would change everything between them. The next day, the cruise ship sailed smoothly across calm waters, and the air was fresh with the smell of the ocean. Music filled the decks, and passengers enjoyed games, food, and laughter. Yet in the middle of all this joy, Isla's thoughts were not with her friends. Her heart and mind stayed fixed on the man who had saved her life. She wanted to know him, not just as a worker on the ship, but as a person with his own story. She began by asking a few gentle questions. At breakfast, while sitting with her friends, she casually asked the waiter if he knew the name of the worker who had jumped into the water the other day. The waiter paused, then nodded. "That man is called Armin," he said. "He works hard here, always quiet, never asking for more than what is given." The name stayed in Isla's mind. She whispered it softly to herself, as though it carried a hidden strength. Armin. She wanted to learn more, but she knew she could not ask openly. Her friends would tease her, and the workers might become uncomfortable. So she decided to watch quietly and learn in her own way. That afternoon, Isla walked across the deck with a book in her hand. She pretended to read, but her eyes followed Armin as he worked. He moved from one place to another, carrying supplies, wiping tables, and polishing the wooden floor. There was no pride in his steps, but there was dignity in the way he worked. He did not complain, nor did he slow down even when the tasks were heavy. She noticed how some passengers ignored him while others spoke to him in short, commanding tones. Yet Armin never responded with anger. He only nodded and continued his work. This quiet strength touched Isla deeply. She thought of all the people she knew, people who had everything yet still complained. Armin had nothing, but he carried himself with patience and calm. In the evening, when the passengers gathered for the party, Isla slipped away for a short walk near the workers' side of the ship. She moved carefully, making sure no one noticed her curiosity. There she saw Armin sitting on a small bench, eating his simple meal of bread and tea. His face looked tired but peaceful. He did not see her watching from a distance. She stood silently, her heart heavy with respect for this man who lived so simply yet carried such quiet courage. Later, when she returned to her cabin, Isla opened her notebook and wrote down her thoughts. She wrote about the moment she fell into the sea, about Armin's strong arms pulling her to safety, and about the calmness in his voice. She wrote about how he worked in silence and how his eyes carried stories he never spoke aloud. The next day, Isla gathered more courage. She walked near the workers' area again, this time when Armin was cleaning. She stopped near him and said softly, "You work very hard." Armin looked up in surprise. He was not used to passengers speaking kindly to him. He lowered his eyes and replied, "It is my duty." "You do it with care," Isla said, her voice gentle. "Not everyone works like that." Armin gave a small smile, though it was faint. "Work is all I have. It keeps me going." Her heart ached at his words, but before she could ask more, another worker called him away. She watched him leave, her mind filled with questions. Who was he before this? What dreams did he once carry? And why did someone like him, who clearly had strength and kindness, end up in such a struggling life? That night, as the ship sailed under a sky full of stars, Isla stood by the railing alone. The sea was endless and the cool wind touched her face. She whispered Armin's name to herself again and again, feeling it connect to her heart in ways she did not understand. In another part of the ship, Armin lay awake on his wooden bench. He thought about the girl he had saved, her kind smile and her gentle words from earlier that day. He told himself not to dream, yet his heart betrayed him. For the first time in many years, he felt seen, even if only for a moment. What neither of them knew was that the truth about Isla was far greater than it appeared, and soon Armin would learn who she really was. The sun shone brightly as the cruise ship moved steadily through the clear blue sea. Passengers enjoyed their morning, some walking on the deck, others taking photographs, and a few resting under umbrellas. Armin was busy as usual, carrying supplies from one corner to another. His movements were quick and precise, but he kept his head down, avoiding attention. The events of the past few days had left a mark on him, yet he carried on as if nothing had happened. Ayla, however, had made up her mind. She could not stop thinking about the man who had saved her life. She wanted him to understand that he was not invisible, and that she truly cared about him, not as a passenger looking down, but as a person who recognized his courage and kindness. She decided to find him where he usually spent his free time, near the back deck. This time she was not disguised by books or pretending to walk. She walked openly, letting the gentle sea breeze move her dress. When Armin noticed her, he stopped for a moment, unsure why she was approaching. "Isla?" he said softly, surprised to hear his name from her. "Yes," she replied with a small smile. "I wanted to talk to you." Armin felt a mix of curiosity and caution. "About what?" he asked, keeping his tone low. She took a deep breath. "I want you to know the truth about me. I am not just a passenger. I own this ship." The word struck Armin like a sudden wave. He blinked several times, unable to believe what he had just heard. You own the ship?" he asked, his voice quiet. Isla nodded. "Yes, my family built it, and it has been my responsibility for some time. I wanted to see the world beyond the walls of the cabin, so I came here like a passenger. But I wanted to be careful, to observe without changing anything around me. I never expected to fall into the water and have you save me." Armin remained silent. He had never imagined that the girl he had watched quietly from a distance, the one whose smile had stayed in his mind, was actually the owner of the cruise. He thought of how she had treated him with kindness, how she had noticed his work, and how she had made no attempt to act superior. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked finally, still processing the revelation. "Because I want you to know," Isla said, her voice steady. "I do not see you as a worker or someone less than anyone else. I see your courage, your strength, and your heart. You risked your life to save me, and I will never forget that. I wanted you to understand that what you did means everything to me." Armin's chest felt heavy. For years he had struggled, feeling invisible to the world, unnoticed and unimportant. Yet here was someone who recognized him, someone whose world seemed so far from his own, and she valued him. I did not do it for praise," he said, finally finding his voice. "I only did what felt right. Anyone else would have done the same." Isla shook her head gently. "No, Armin, not anyone would have done it. You risked yourself without hesitation. That takes more than just doing what is right. That takes courage, and it takes a good heart." Armin looked at her, unsure what to say. He had never received such words from anyone before, especially not from someone who had everything in life. Ayla smiled softly. "I want to help you, Armin. You are not just a worker here. You have dreams, I can see that. And I want to give you a chance to follow them." Armin's eyes widened in surprise. "A chance?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I want to give you a position on this ship where your hard work and honesty are recognized. Not as a helper, but as someone who can contribute and grow. I will make sure you have the support you need." For the first time in years, Armin felt hope rise in his heart. He had struggled alone, never dreaming that fate would bring him to a moment like this. The girl who owned the ship, the girl whose life was far different from his own, was offering him a chance, a new beginning. He could hardly believe it, yet as he looked at her, her eyes steady and sincere, he knew it was real. Isla had not only saved him from doubt, but she had also opened a door to a future he had only dreamed about. That moment, on the deck of the cruise ship, both of their lives began to change. For Armin, it was the start of a new journey filled with opportunity, respect, and hope. For Ayla, it was a reminder that courage and kindness could be found in the most unexpected places, and that sometimes life had a way of rewarding the good hearts that moved quietly, unseen by most. The following morning, the cruise ship moved steadily over calm waters, the sun shining warmly on the deck. Passengers enjoyed breakfast and the fresh sea breeze, but for Armin, the day felt different. His heart carried a mix of excitement and nervousness. After days of quiet work, he had just been offered a new opportunity by Isla, the girl who had saved his life and who had also revealed that she owned the ship. He walked to the deck early, carrying supplies for the kitchen, but he could not stop thinking about the new responsibilities Isla had promised him. He wondered how life would change, how people would see him now, and whether he could live up to the expectations of someone so kind and wise. His thoughts were interrupted by a gentle voice calling him from the upper deck. "Armin," Isla said softly, her hand resting lightly on the railing. She looked calm and happy, dressed in a light dress that fluttered with the wind. "I wanted to see you before the passengers gather." Armin hurried toward her, unsure how to respond. "Yes, Isla?" he asked politely, lowering his eyes out of habit. She smiled. "I want you to know that what I promised yesterday is real. I will personally make sure you are given a proper role on this ship. You will be more than a worker. You will be someone whose hard work and honesty are respected. You will also have the chance to learn, grow, and even lead in some areas if you wish." Armin felt a warmth in his chest, something he had not felt in years. He looked at her, trying to find the right words. I do not know how to thank you. I never imagined someone would care so much about me." Isla shook her head gently. "It is not about thanks. It is about recognizing what is right. You saved my life, Armin, and you showed me courage and kindness. The world often ignores people like you, but I will not. I want to give you a chance to live the life you deserve." For a long moment, Armin said nothing. His mind was filled with thoughts of the past, the struggles, the loneliness, the nights of uncertainty. And now suddenly a door had opened before him. It was a chance he had never hoped for. Yet here it was, offered by someone whose own life had seemed so distant from his. I will try my best," he finally said, his voice steady. "I will not let you down," Isla nodded. "I know you will not. You are stronger than you think, Armin. And I want you to see that the world is not always cruel. Sometimes it rewards those who are kind and brave, even if they are unnoticed for a long time." From that day onward, Armin's life began to change. He was given a proper position on the ship, helping organize events, manage supplies, and assist in areas where his hard work could be appreciated. He learned quickly, and his dedication impressed both passengers and staff. No longer just a struggling man, he became someone respected and trusted by those around him. For Ayla, the experience reminded her of the value of humility and courage. She had seen many people with wealth and status, but Armin showed her that true strength came from heart and action, not possessions or appearances. She often watched him work with quiet admiration, realizing that their meeting had been more than a coincidence. It had been fate. As days passed, Armin and Ayla grew closer, not as employer and employee, but as two people who understood the importance of kindness, courage, and respect. They shared small conversations on the deck, laughed at simple jokes, and learned about each other's dreams and hopes. The connection between them was quiet but strong, built on trust and gratitude. The cruise continued across the sparkling sea, and Armin looked at the horizon with a sense of hope he had never felt before. He had faced struggles, but now he had a purpose, recognition, and the possibility of a brighter future. And beside him, Isla smiled, knowing that life had brought them together in a way neither of them could forget. On that ship, surrounded by the endless sea and the warmth of the sun, both of them realized that courage, kindness, and a single act of bravery could change lives forever. The journey had begun with a rescue, and it ended with new beginnings, hope, and the promise of a life full of possibilities.